everybody. Welcome back. This is Music Talk with Mike and Dave. I'm Dave.
I'm Mike.
Glad y'all are back. This week, we are doing AC/DC, Power Up. And this is what the album cover looks like here. You see that?
And to put it in other words, old-fashioned rock and roll.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool CD cover. I mean, actually, I like it. It's like the whole thing power up, we're going to power it back up. It looks like this. It's got very bright words on there so you can read the tracks, which I like, with my eyes. Got a little thing going on with the, on the inside cover there with the band members. The CD itself's got their little lightning bolt, which I'm probably sure you'd have that in the middle of the record. They did not put the lyrics on here.
I don't know if ZZ Top thought of a lightning bolt there.
Well, that's always been there. That lightning bolt's been with AC/DC forever. So this is the inner sleeves, got the thing, looks like the, road case. Yeah. And it's got some pictures in here. You got Angus doing his thing and, nothing major, just typical. There they are standing in the cover picture. Basically, it's the same picture on the cover, just them in it. So it's not bad. I mean, it's one thing I will tell you about the CD the CD cover that I can't stand, because I've always got to tell you the stuff I don't like. But you got to reach in the middle to get them both. So you almost got to like bend it backwards to get the sleeve out, and then the CD is stuck in here. So normally you could just reach in and I don't know. It's kind of makes it hard on somebody. Anyway.
Well, I got to hand it to him on this. I enjoyed the whole album. I haven't listened to him since the fact that Brian Johnson left and they brought Axl Rose on. I'm like, yeah, I'm not touching him.
Right.
I don't like the Worm. I don't like him. I'm sorry. I had to put it out there. That's just my thoughts.
Well, I'm definitely not a big fan of Axl Rose either. And I didn't like the fact that he went to sing with him for one reason, is because now I had to hate two bands, right? Because I already didn't like Guns N' Roses. And then he went to sing with AC/DC. And it's like, now I have to hate AC/DC too. But fortunately, and I heard a story about it, and all he did was really fill in for some concerts so they wouldn't have to cancel gigs, because, Brian had that hearing problem. Yeah. And,
Which healed from. He even talked about that. He said it was a miracle.
Yeah. And they still not even telling you what it is they did, because it's still not patented yet.
Right.
It's some experimental thing. So I'm with you. I didn't like the fact that Axl, went to sing with them, but I do appreciate the fact that they got through the concerts they had booked. So that was a good thing.
And I hope Axl took notes on that, because I remember what he did to Metallica.
Well, I was going to tell you, they said that he showed up on time every gig, which is like out of its character. And the guy that was actually interviewing Angus that I saw made a point to mention that. They're like, how did you get Axl to show up on time? Because, he never does.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I was very happy to hear that Brian was back also, because I felt like, if you're going to do an album, and the best part is Cliff Williams came back because he retired. Yep. And Phil Rudd's back.
Yep. And there are some a couple little stories there too. I mean, with Cliff Williams, he talked about this album.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they were talking about touring once they got it done, but of course it didn't get finished until 2019, and COVID set in.
Right.
Got everything down. Everybody sat at home.
Yeah.
Cliff Williams said that he was willing to do short-term touring, not long-term. His health won't allow it.
Yeah.
So he's got some health issues. I didn't find out what it was. I did a little research on that. Phil Rudd now.
Yeah. He's another story.
He, well, the thing is, I did a lot of reading on this, and what it basically amounted to was he PO'd at his assistant.
Mm-hmm.
She was supposed to put a party together for a solo album that he put out called Good Job. And well, he wound up going to the party, and when he got there, everybody was snockered. They all had glasses of whiskey, and they were just trash. And what he was expecting was to go there, everybody drinking tea and having snacks and everything, listen to the album, and then party afterwards and talk about the album. Well,
Yeah.
they had party before they even heard it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
he
plus he was coming over overcoming addictions and alcohol abuse too.
Right.
So
and got accused of threatening to murder
his wife.
his assistant. No,
Yeah. Or was the assistant? Okay.
he had actually tried to hire people to do this. Well, according to hearsay,
Right.
to what, and he calls it bullshit. He goes, "I never did that." And since then, he and his assistant have talked. He apologized. The apology was accepted.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yeah.
He was
It was just a
they and now he's free and clear.
Mhm.
The only thing the charges stuck on, they didn't stick on the charges of trying to hire somebody to kill his assistant. The
Right.
drug charges stuck. So
Yeah.
he was on house arrest. Now he's clear of those. I guess he went through some rehab and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now I was totally stoked. This is basically as close to the classic lineup as you're going to get.
It is. Yeah. I mean,
Malcolm had dementia. He passed away 2017.
right.
You know, the Stevie Young, he was the son of the oldest brother, Stephen Young.
Stephen. Yep. Yep.
And I didn't know that. Stevie Young, my age. I'm like, my God.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's no spring chicken by any means.
5 years old, man.
I know. Well, and you know, the thing too is their whole family was music oriented. I mean, their first 4 albums, or I think it was 4 or 5 albums, were produced by their other older brother, George.
Right.
George Young. So he
Right.
did all their albums up to 79, which was the Highway to Hell album, and that's where Mutt Lange came in.
Right.
But
I love
what's that?
Highway to Hell. I love that album, man.
Yeah, that was a great one. Unfortunately, not long after that is when Bon Scott died.
Right. Then back in
Yep.
that was
Well,
anybody listens to AC/DC has heard Back in Black. I'm
well,
sorry.
I remember when Back in Black came out because, well, earlier, I mean, in the 70s, mid to late 70s, when we were living in Ohio, Mark was super into AC/DC. I mean, he would dress up like Angus. We had all the air guitar stuff, and you know, we would jam it. And I remember when Bon Scott died, and Mark kind of took it a little hard. And then we moved up to New York, and I remember going to school, and I was playing basketball, and I remember hearing Hell's Bells. They used to play stuff like that back in high school in the gymnasiums and things. When you're playing basketball, you had music playing. And I remember hearing Hell's Bells in the gymnasium, and I was like, holy crap, who is this? Because I didn't even know who it was. It was so new, right? And they said it's AC/DC, and I'm like, what? Who is this new singer, right? Because, you know, you didn't know what to expect. Bon Scott died. You're thinking, you know, are they even going to play anymore, right? And then here comes Hell's Bells and Back in Black and Shook Me All Night Long and all these songs, and it's like, holy crap, man, they're right back in it. So they haven't lost anything at all.
I remember living there on Simon's Drive and Midnight Special coming on, and there's AC/DC.
Yep.
You're doing headphones, you know, and it's like, oh my God, man.
Crazy, right?
You know, they couldn't have picked a better person, which will lead up to a subject we're going to do later, but they could not pick a better replacement.
I love Brian Johnson, man. I mean, he's got an original voice. And if you ever try, I try to sing like that, which I can't sing anyway. But when I do, I cough because it scratches my voice so bad that I can't even make it through a verse, you know. I don't know how he sings that way, but he does, and I like it, you know.
He the master of his art. And
he's been around too, man. He started out with a band called Geordie.
Yeah, and he actually did some touring in the UK.
Yeah. Yeah, they were in a little teeny. I don't know if you saw that, talking about his little van that he got in, and because I
And
actually saw him interview Dave Grohl. He was actually interviewing Dave Grohl, and they were talking about, because Dave Grohl's getting ready to do a van tour. They're
right.
going to get back in a van again and tour. And he was talking about when him and Jordy toured in their little van, and it was pretty funny. It ought to be interesting. I would like to go see Dave Grohl if he does that van tour. I think that would be super cool. To this album, Power Up, I mean, this was produced by Brendan O'Brien, mixed by Brendan O'Brien and Mike Frazier, which I thought the production and the mix was great. I
Well,
mean,
all I did, I sat here and I listened to song after song, and I listed them all out. And I was going to make a good comment after each one, well, good or whatever kind of comment.
yeah.
I listen to Realize.
Mhm.
Then I listen to Rejection. Then I listen to Shot in the Dark. And on Rejection, Shot in the Dark, I go, good intro, good intro. And then the only thing I could figure out after the whole album was after I read what they said, old fashioned rock and roll.
Yeah.
And
Well,
God, they brought it right back to the roots, man.
and the thing that, about it is they put this album together the way you should. I mean, it starts off, it kicks you in the ass, right?
Yeah.
The opening song, Realize, it's a great opening song. I mean, right
Well,
off the bat, you're rocking it out. And
you,
like you said, Rejection, Shot in the Dark, both of those, the one thing about it was the traditional AC/DC call and response. You had the band doing the and then Angus, I mean, both of those, it was traditional AC/DC. You know what I'm saying?
and that's what I was going to say too. Stevie, and I read some other reviews on this too. Stevie did more than cover for Malcolm.
Yeah,
And I read a little bit snippet of an interview that somebody was doing with him, and he goes, "I was just doing what I felt from the heart."
yeah. And the thing too is, if you look at the credits on the album, it says all songs written by Angus and Malcolm Young. So these were all stuff that Malcolm and Angus had been working on before, you know. So
Said, "Oh, that if Malcolm was alive today, that he would be very proud of the way this album turned."
absolutely, because Malcolm was the driving force behind the band. He was always the center, you know.
Yep.
He kept everything going. And
Mhm.
we'll just go right through them too. After Shot in the Dark, you had Through the Mist of Time, which was a little bit of a breakup. I liked it because it brought you, a little different,
Mhm.
and then Kick You When You're Down, and Witch's Spell, all good songs. Demon Fire, I really liked because he came in with that deep voice.
Yeah.
I like that deep voice. I wish he would do more of that. And
Well,
then it had that great bass line and guitar riff that, that was awesome.
I think Demon Fire was the one also did a little bit more movement, melody wise than most of their songs. It seemed to take on a little bit more of its own character.
It did.
But
It didn't have that same basic AC/DC formula.
I call it the four on the
Yeah,
floor.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
It seemed to kind of venture off, but it was still AC/DC. I don't care how you looked at it.
yeah. And then Wild Reputation, No Man's Land, Systems Down,
Mhm.
uh,
Money.
Money Shot, and then Code Red. Now, for me, I mean, it's 12 songs. They're all AC/DC. It's the perfect formula for a hard rock song, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, every song is put together perfectly. You know,
Yep.
you can pick any one of these out. You can play any of these songs. It's AC/DC from the first note.
Mhm.
I mean, seriously. The four that really stood out to me that I really liked was Realize, Shot in the Dark, Demon Fire, and Code Red. I can see all four of those being in every concert that AC/DC does from here on out.
Yeah.
You're gonna hear those songs.
The whole time I was listening to the album, there wasn't one song on here that I wanted to even think about skipping through. But at the same time, and see, we've been talking about Back in Black.
Mhm.
I just look at this as like this is the second LP to Back in Black. This should
That's
have
the
been
same. That's exactly what I was thinking.
it should have been a double LP release.
Yeah,
know?
I mean, I've heard some of the other stuff in between, and all their albums, in between. There's like 6 of them between Back in Black and now. But to
Right.
me, this goes exactly back to Back in Black.
It's the original lineup, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's
Bonds
it's
and
and it's got that same passion too. You know what I mean?
and
So
Phil Rudd, I was listening to his drums, and I mean, I walked all around while I was listening to it. That man has the most consistent snare sound of
yeah,
drummer I've ever heard in my life. And I'm
dude.
talking, it does not change. It doesn't move. It's the same crack every time he hits it.
And here's the thing too. I have 2 notes on here, and the 2 notes are, well, I've got more than 2 notes, but I've got recorded and mixed well, which we talked about already. But then the bass sound was perfect.
Yes,
I
yes,
mean, that bass was like, that's what it's supposed to sound like. That's what a bass should sound like. And then I have the drum sound was awesome, man.
oh
I
yeah.
mean, the hi-hats, the snare, the cymbals, and that bass drum.
Same sound that they had on Back in Black. I'm telling
Dude,
you right now, it's just like they lifted a lot of that stuff from Back in Black.
it
The,
is.
the way the hi hats, the way he worked those hi hats and that snare pop, same thing, man.
You're right. You're exactly right. And I have to say that a lot of that must be Phil Rudd, right? Because I mean, a couple albums they had different drummers.
Cliff Williams talked about when he was recording this album. He said this was some of the most fun that he had ever had in the band. And
Dude,
you can tell by the way the rhythm section is just snapping along, man.
it is. It is super tight.
He actually played a little bit of games at times. They didn't venture far off base, but
No,
they came here and there, challenging the melody, and it was nice.
yeah. I mean, honestly, it's the best ACDC sounded since Back in Black, in
Oh,
my opinion. This
that's
this album is fantastic.
yeah, that's my opinion too.
And
I I'm I'm a
I kind of left them a little bit because some of the stuff, the Flick of the Switch, Fly on the Wall, some of those albums just got a little bit, I didn't really care a whole lot for them.
well
I,
the
I
other
mean,
I forget his name now. I had it written down. I can't find it though. But the other drummer, good drummer,
yeah, yeah, they had great drummers. I mean,
wasn't he wasn't Phil Rudd, man.
no. And the thing about Phil Rudd is he's kind of like Ringo, right?
To the
Where
point,
people, what's that?
simple and to the point.
Yeah. And people say, oh, he's not really that good until you try to do it, right?
Right.
Same with Ringo. Oh, he's not that good. Well, you try to play Ringo and tell me how good he is, right?
In
So
fact,
I don't know. I thought it was great. I mean, I saw ACDC back in 1985, and Yngwie Malmsteen opened up for him, of all bands, right? So I get to see Yngwie Malmsteen, who just totally tears the guitar up, and then ACDC comes out, and not only did they sound great, but what a show, man! Right? I mean, Angus is everywhere. I mean, literally, you didn't know where he was from. The lights would go out, and then he'd be behind you, and then the lights would go out, and then he's up there, and then he's running all over the place, and he's still that way, you know.
yep.
And what a great band! I mean, I remember, getting into ACDC in the late 70s, probably around 77, 78. I remember looking at that If You Want Blood, You've Got It album with, the SG through his body, and listening to those live songs. You had like Riff Raff and the Jack and Whole Lot of Rosie and, Rock and Roll Damnation, High Voltage, and then Let There Be Rock. And it's like, wow, right? And then Bon Scott dies, and you're like,
Well,
crap.
get
And
big,
then, what's that?
balls. Big balls.
Big balls. But then in 1980, when they came back, and it's like, with Brian Johnson on vocals, and it was like, wow, they're still kicking it. And that whole album Back in Black was great too, right? And then and like you said it perfectly. This is just like the second part of Back in Black. It
Yeah,
really
exactly.
is.
It is. And I think, honestly, I know that Malcolm and Angus worked on this stuff, but I got a sneaking suspicion that a lot of this stuff came from the era of when they were doing Back in Black.
It
Uh,
it could be some stuff they had in a can, you know.
what I'm saying, I think it was some of the canned stuff, and they
Mhm.
went, pulled it out, polished it up, put it out there, and I'm glad they did
And the
because
thing too, we've talked a lot about the bass and the drums, and of course Stevie and Angus, but Brian's voice sounds great
oh yeah,
on this.
he's straining it all.
No, I mean, it really sounds like it did 40 years ago, you
I
know?
remember being here about, I don't know, a couple of years ago. I saw on YouTube one of their live performances, one of the last ones that Brian Johnson's doing, and his voice was not there.
Yeah.
Live situation, it was not there at all, and I was like, "Yep, age is getting to him."
I think I think not only age, but I think probably the problems he was having with his
All of
hearing,
hearing his polyps and everything else. Yeah.
and
Uh,
he was probably not feeling very good about himself.
well, I mean, when you can't achieve what you're known for, when you can't put it out there, that is a rough feeling, man.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people get that way, and some of them never recover. But this is like talking about a bounce back album. Wow,
Like,
you know, I'll go see them. I hope they come around.
do it any day of the week.
Yeah,
I'll fashion rock and roll, and that was in their words.
yeah.
Got to mention that they're the ones that put that out there, and I can't tell you how much I agree with that.
Well, it's like, they used to talk about Aerosmith had the formula back in the 80s and 90s. They had the formula of what a song should be, chorus, verse, whatever. But AC/DC has always had the knack of making the perfect hard rock song. I mean, really.
Well, they never went after the theatrics. They went after the elbow bending, screaming and hollering rock and roll. You
Yeah.
know,
And that's
Brad,
another thing I was going to say too. They always had a way of making the backup vocals sound like it's 50 people. You
right?
know what I mean? It's like the whole crowd's singing on these records. They've always been able to do that. It's crazy to me. But anyway, well, I gave it an 8, man. I mean, I liked it. 8. It's an 8 record all day long. Probably could have took it up to an 8.5, but 8 I think is about it because as much as I like the album, I kind of wish that there was a couple songs missing off of it. I think if it would have been 10 songs, I might have rated it more because I got the same thing over a couple times, But if you'd have took a couple of them out and made it a 10-song CD, I probably could have jacked it up a little more. But at some point, I started to hear the same thing over and over, you
Well,
know.
well,
So, but that's their forte, and I get it.
I'm gonna go with I'm gonna put it at a 9
You give
because,
it a 9. Woo, that's a big one, Mike.
well, the reason why I'm saying that because a lot of what's behind this album is a memorial to Malcolm,
It is, and it
and
does, and it does say for Mal on the album
and
somewhere.
part of it is too, and I feel in my heart that what they did, a lot of this material came from the era of the Back in Black, which is my favorite era.
Yeah,
ACDC was doing, and dude, they just nailed it. I mean, I
they
kept
did.
it's just ACDC, and they changed it up enough to where it kept me interested through every song.
If
I
if you if you ever think of an AC/DC album, this is one.
This
So
one, Back in Black, and of course, any of the Bon Scott stuff. There you go.
this one is from Mal.
Yep,
Got a candle there, pretty sweet.
I see it. Yep.
Um, yeah, I mean, I dig it. I like it. I like the album cover. It's bright. It's got the bright red. I like the silhouette of their instruments there. You know, even Stevie's playing the same, like Gretsch.
He's
Gretsch
endorsed,
could, you, you know.
endorsed by him. Yeah,
So
look out for a tour. It's going to be short and sweet, and you're
Yeah.
going to pay money to get a seat. But if you can do it, it'll be worth seeing the show. I will guarantee you that.
Well, if you're ever an AC/DC fan, or even if you just like rock and roll, I recommend you get it. Power Up. I gave it an 8.5. Mike gave it a 9. Did I give it 8.5 or 8?
Yeah, well, you said you could
I
go
gave it
in.
an 8. I could have went 8.5. If they'd have dropped 2 songs, I maybe would have. And I know I just say that because I would have I would have rather wanted more than have more. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's
Well,
just
and see, I think they were getting ready to even make a bigger splash with this because I got written down here. It was recorded in secret in Vancouver,
yeah.
2019, 2019.
Yep.
COVID hit, and they
Yep.
had any idea of any touring.
Well,
So,
and they said that the reason they put it out in 2020 is because they felt like people needed something good.
well, yeah,
They were gonna hold it.
right. Well, to look at some of the quotes, they were talking about the stuff that's out there today.
Yeah.
Well, they've had too many gummy bears.
Yeah. Yeah. I
I got
mean,
it. It's just nothing but there. There's really hardly anything that's on the major front that resembles rock and roll.
right. And that's why that's why we're digging in now, because we want to try to bring this stuff up. So you know that there's more out there than the crap you're listening to on your local radio stations,
I agree with that.
because I don't know about where y'all live, but the radio stations right here suck.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you obviously saw the Grammys suck.
Mhm.
You know, so with the exception of Bruno Mars, there's really, wasn't nothing going on for me out there, which reminds me of last week, by the way. Marcus King did not win. Just saying. Um,
Just, just saying.
I'm just saying that Marcus King did not win. I'm pretty sure we predicted that a little bit, but
No reply required.
no reply required. And if y'all watch that video and look at some of the comments on the last one, you'll get it. So, and I didn't reply. I didn't say anything.
Didn't either.
I didn't need to. Yep,
There was no need. It speaks for itself.
it does. And I feel bad about that because I like Marcus King. I just did not like that record.
Yeah, I like him too. The dude's got an old soul.
Yeah,
I,
I think he got pushed.
I hope he changes producers
Yep.
and management
Yeah,
because
he got pushed the wrong way.
I really believe management is taking him wrong direction. I hope Joe Bonamassa
Yep.
takes his wing a little bit.
I do too, because I think he'd be great with someone who knows. But anyway, well, let's go to this topic of the week. And the topic of the week, which is bands that switch singers. And really what I was going for on this was bands that switch singers and remain successful or even more successful. Did I say that right? Let me try that again. Bands that remain successful.
Successful.
Successful, you know. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and throw this one out there because we just sat and reviewed the CD, and that is AC/DC. I mean, I'm sure you probably have that on your list.
Yeah, I've got it. It's down there, about Bon Scott dying and
Yep.
Johnson.
Yeah, Bon Scott died in what, 80, early 1980. And then
And Brian Johnson stepped in.
so yeah, that's what I got for number 5 is AC/DC.
Yeah, my first one was Pink Floyd, believe it or not.
Yeah, I have that down here too.
Sid Barrett, he they actually let him go in '68 because of his drug abuse and everything.
Yeah.
He had actually got to the point to where it was he was literally psychologically affected by LSD and everything else. And
Yeah.
talking about they were in a studio recording, I forget which album it was.
It was Wish You Were Here.
Then they looked up and they saw his silhouette
Yeah.
in the doorway. He never really walked all the way in the studio.
Yeah. Yeah. They said there was like some old man that kept hanging out and they didn't know who it was.
Sid
Come to
Barrett.
find out it was Sid Barrett. Yeah. It's crazy. And the album was basically about him, which just makes it even more crazy.
Crazy Diamond and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Every,
that's a great Pink Floyd record too. So my next one, which this one actually, I guess this fits in the category, but they actually changed 3 times, but they got less successful on the third singer. But anyway, it's going to be Genesis. I mean, you had Peter Gabriel for, five, 6 albums. And they were at their peak actually with Peter Gabriel at Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. And then he leaves the band, right?
75.
Yeah. So then Phil takes over and,
Could
they come in.
same time. So they had to hire Bill Buford to come in and play drums for the first tour.
Yeah.
Collins could stand up front and do the vocal work.
Right. And I mean, it's kind of like a cheat here, I guess, because he was already singing some of the stuff in the band, even though it was mostly, harmony stuff with Peter. But I mean, as he steps in, I think they actually became more successful with Phil up front because they started writing more commercialized hits, basically.
Well, I think too, Phil Collins had a voice that,
It was more relatable.
well, when you put that doubling effect on it, it was so fat and covered a lot of
Yeah.
on the recordings.
Yeah. And then Phil took them all the way through, We Can't Dance, which is a lot of time. And then they actually got another singer named Ray Wilson and did Calling All Stations, which I don't think went over too well. I don't think it had much success. Even the guy was a good singer, but it just wasn't Genesis at that point, you know.
Well, yeah.
But
And
yeah, so
so, well, my next one was Fleetwood Mac.
yeah, I have that one too.
Bob Welch left in 74.
Yep.
Ushered in Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham. Bob Welch wanted to be the star,
Hmm.
and it just fell apart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But like you were saying, after Bob Welch and Peter Green, then it became Lindsey Buckingham and
Stevie Nicks,
Stevie Nicks. Yeah.
Chris McVie.
Well,
With
Christine McVie, I dig.
John McVie was a founding member with McFleetwood,
Fleetwood, right?
and then they brought in Christine a little while later, and that was during the Peter Gabriel stuff. I mean,
Yeah, because I
no,
think Christine was
Bob Welch.
with Jimmy's Chicken Shack for a long time.
What's that?
Christine actually was with Jimmy's Chicken Shack,
Yeah,
and then she got up with Fleetwood Mac later, right? So
he wasn't in there on the very first, when it
right. Well, that's cool because I did have them written. I have both of yours written down so far. See, I'm still following you, man. I've tapped into you, Mike.
when you're listening to the top notch stuff, man.
You can't help it, right?
Exactly.
So my next one I'm going to go with is Rainbow. Okay. So Rainbow started out, they had Dio and,
Right.
put out great records.
Yep.
I mean, and then in 78, Dio leaves and then they get Graham Bonnet. Well,
Mhm.
Graham Bonnet comes in and they actually put out a couple hits with him. And then he leaves and then Joe Lynn Turner comes in. And then they really got commercial success, with Street of Dreams and, you know, Stone Cold were 2 big hits for Rainbow. And I mean, with Dio, they didn't really have the commercial hits, but they were great. I mean, what a band, right? So then, you got Dio, the Graham Bonnet, and then Joe Lynn Turner, which I think they were at their most commercial success, even though I think the band with Dio was better. I like the Dio era better than the Joe Lynn Turner era. But then, then most recently he started again and he's got a guy named Ronnie Romero, which Ronnie Romero is a great singer. So yeah, that would be my third pick is Rainbow because they had Dio and then Graham Bonnet and then Joe Lynn Turner. So between those, I think they got more successful commercially with Joe Lynn Turner, but the band was much better with Dio, I think. So
Well, yeah, and I mean, there's one that's staring us obviously in the face. It's Black Sabbath.
yeah, that would have been my next pick. But go ahead.
I mean, okay, honestly, Black Sabbath is not Black Sabbath without the original lineup. I don't care how you look at it.
Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne and doing Crazy Train and all that stuff. That's not Black Sabbath.
Mhm.
Black Sabbath is Paranoid, and Iron Man.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Fairies wear boots.
Yeah.
That's Black Sabbath. But
Yeah.
then they brought in Ronnie James Dio.
Right.
Again, we're talking about Ronnie.
Yeah.
Ronnie James Dio is probably one of the greatest rock and roll singers out. He's in the top 10.
He's in the top 5.
Well, and I'm sorry, any band that that man walked into while he was alive,
Yeah.
the Ronnie James Dio show.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with it being Black Sabbath or Rainbow or whatever you wanted to call it. It was
Yeah.
Ronnie James Dio.
Yeah.
And you get in for an evening of entertainment. And I don't care how you look at it. But to put it into perspective, it wasn't Black Sabbath.
No, I mean, you still had the Iommi riffs, right? And but with Dio, I felt like they could do a little more than
Yeah.
they could with Ozzy because Ozzy kind of was like wasn't much you could do with Ozzy, even though I love the Ozzy. Black Sabbath, you're right. Black Sabbath with Ozzy is Black Sabbath. But I did love those 2 albums with Dio, and I thought they were both great records. And
Definitely, they were definitely recordings to be listened to and owned.
yeah, both of
Um,
them.
but I don't know,
But then, even after Dio, they had Ian Gillan for the Born Again album,
yeah,
which was a great record.
yeah, but it's not Black Sabbath.
It's not. But then after Gillan, they had a guy named Tony Martin, right? Which are some of the records that I honestly can tell you I really didn't even listen to. I quit listening to Sabbath after Born Again, and there was a bunch more he did. I went and listened to some later. I did go back and check them out, but at that point, it was kind of like just Tony Iommi because Geezer wasn't even on like 1 or 2, I believe, 1 or 2 of them albums. So it was really Tony Iommi with whoever else he could get. And then after Tony Martin, Dio came back and they did the Heaven and Hell thing. They didn't call themselves Black Sabbath. They went with Heaven and Hell, which is probably more what you were, you know, what you're saying. They weren't really Black Sabbath. Maybe they should have just called themselves Heaven and Hell after Ozzy went.
Right. Well, they
Because
should. I
yeah,
mean, they should have hung the Black Sabbath hat up
yeah,
because the reality is there's just some names that would have been just like taking the Rolling Stones and replacing Jagger with Sammy Hagar.
yeah.
That's not the Rolling Stones. I'm sorry. Nobody can sing like Mick Jagger.
Well,
Nobody put that twist out there and hold the band together the way that man did.
well, one thing I heard an interview with Glenn Hughes, which, by the way, Glenn Hughes was the lead singer for Black Sabbath too. I don't know if you know that.
I
Well,
know.
he
Like,
actually, it was a Tony Iommi was doing a solo record, right? And he got Glenn to do a couple songs. And next thing you know, the record label said, well, we don't want to call it Tony Iommi. We want to call it Black Sabbath. So that kind of kept the name. And then Glenn Hughes is like, well, what do I do now? I've never really just sang. I've
right.
always played bass and sang. Now I got to go out and do a tour with Black Sabbath and I'm just a singer. And he's like, he couldn't deal with it very well. So he
No,
didn't really stick around.
I mean, you get that muscle memory, and that's the way you present yourself, and
Yeah.
it doesn't
Well,
work any. You know,
exactly. But the best thing I will say that after Ozzy left, Dio came, then Gillan, you had Tony Martin, you had Glenn Hughes, then you went back to Dio, and then a wonderful thing happened, and they put out an album again with Ozzy, and it was called 13. And I don't know if you've heard that album. It's a good album, man. I mean, it's Ozzy with Sabbath again, and I want to say it came out in 2013.
did they
Maybe
have
that's why they called it 13.
was it Bill Ward on drums?
No, Bill Ward didn't play on it. You had Vinny,
See,
but
wasn't. Yeah, I'm sorry, it wasn't Black Sabbath.
no, but you did have Ozzy and Tony and Geezer back together again, which is cool. You know, the old stuff is the best. You know,
I think that Sharon Osbourne,
wanted money.
well, he killed Black Sabbath. I really think she did.
I agree. Well,
Yeah.
that was my number 2 pick. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a different one in, and I'm going to go with the Doobie Brothers.
What?
Okay. So the Doobie Brothers, you know, you had Tom Johnson was the main singer for a while, right? And then, of course, Patrick Simmons sang as well. Well, Tom left, and then they replaced him with Michael McDonald, right? And of course, now Tom's back. So,
Yeah.
but all 3 eras of the Doobie Brothers were very successful. I mean,
Yeah.
very successful. So I'm gonna go with the Doobies. I've always loved them. I still think that my favorite album by them is always going to be what was once Vices are now Habits.
That one in Toulouse Street.
Yeah, I mean, I could put Vices on and listen to that over and over.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and even with Michael McDonald, I know a lot of people didn't like him when he came in, but man, the guy can sing, man.
His
You know?
voice sounds hoarse. It's how bad it is. It's
Yeah.
like a whole choir in itself, you know.
Yeah, 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 and
Minute by minute, you know. I
you know,
mean,
some of the songs that he brought with him, you know, I mean, were you know, taking it to the streets was probably one of their bigger hits, right? Uh,
well, we the last show I saw with Michael McDonald was he opened up for Steely Dan down in Phoenix, the amphitheater.
that'd be a great show.
Dude.
Did he sing with Steely Dan at all?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
after he warmed up for him,
yeah,
come out to his show
and he
and
came in and sat in.
stuff, and then Steely Dan came out and they did about probably 45 minutes, took a break, came back, and then there's Michael McDonald
That's awesome.
with his keyboard singing all that backup work with him.
That's great, man. All right, go ahead with your next one.
My other pick was Iron Maiden.
Yeah,
Paul Di'Anno.
yep.
He did the first 2 albums, and they outed him because of drug abuse in '78.
Hmm.
And in '80, Bruce Dickinson
And
came
they put out Number of the Beast, man, and that album was just
in the UK, the first album, right out of the chute.
yeah.
And there it is, man, Bruce Dickinson.
I liked Paul Di'Anno as a singer. I thought at that point they were more of a heavy metal band. And then when Bruce came, you got more of the operatic singing, right? And then you got Nico in, and then, you know, I kind of dropped off after Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, and then they started doing a lot of changes.
Well, in all honesty, you know, I'm not a big
Iron Maiden fan.
like Iron Maiden or you know Judas Priest or bands like that. You know, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna pretend that I was. I heard their stuff. I mean, you couldn't help but hear their stuff. I mean,
Yep.
it was, and of course, you sit back and you listen to it, especially as a musician. You pick your instrument out of the whole mix and you're listening to it, and I got to say, you know, I mean, these guys are kicking ass.
Yeah.
You know, I will take Judas Priest or Iron Maiden any day, over top of what was going on with Motley Crue.
Well,
That's Motley Crue.
that was glam rock.
Well, that was some of that. I'm sorry. I'm gonna repeat what ACDC was talking about. I said bubblegum gummy
What?
bear.
Yeah. Iron Maiden, great pick. You know,
I'm-
believe it or not, I had them, I was going to write them down, and for some reason, I forgot to write them down. I've got every one of their albums. You'd think that'd be one of my first picks, right? So, anyway, I'm going to go to my number 1. I'm glad you said Iron Maiden, though. My number 1 is going to be Van Halen.
Yep.
I mean, you know, you had the Dave era. And again, like Black Sabbath, you kind of think Dave was Van Halen. And then when Hagar come along, kind of wasn't Van Halen anymore, right?
And Hagar.
Yeah. And that's why that was deemed as Van Hagar,
Sammy Halen.
Sammy Halen. But they became, if
They were,
not as successful, more successful.
I think so too. They were more successful on a more commercial basis.
Yeah.
I think with Dave, that is that is Van Halen for
Mhm.
what they,
Yep.
and David left or they got rid of him, whichever way it went.
Whatever way you want to go. Yeah.
They brought in Sammy.
Yeah.
That is a huge story in itself.
Yeah.
I mean, to follow that man, and what a voice.
Yeah.
One in the top five.
Right.
I'm sorry he's in the top five. I don't give a damn how you look at it.
Yeah.
You got Sammy. You
He's
got
still doing it too, man. And he's like 70, what, 73?
73, 74 years old.
And the circle is like kicking it, man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I honestly, I will tell you the truth that I didn't like Van Halen as much with Sammy, but I love Sammy. I will always love Sammy. I just think that the Van Halen era with Sammy was not my favorite.
Well, the thing with Sammy Hagar, when David Lee Roth left, Eddie was searching.
Mm-hmm.
Van Halen was a huge Ronnie Montrose fan.
Yeah.
A lot of
Yeah.
the stuff he did on stage and in the studio, he lifted from Ronnie Montrose.
Well,
And the thing is what their manager was saying to him, their producer, you need to hire Sammy. So they brought Sammy in.
here's
And
a funny story too.
I think it was a big plus on their end as far as
As far as what they could do.
putting it across production wise and commercial success. There was more control, and you had a man that knew what he was doing with the guitar in his hand.
Right.
And
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you now have a guitar player and a singer where Eddie can go play his keys and then come out. But the thing, well, here's a fun. I got a couple funny things real quick. If you listen to some of the old tapes where Van Halen's got these tapes from concerts they did, they actually, before they were famous, they were actually doing Montrose songs. So David Lee Roth was singing Sammy Hagar,
right,
right?
exactly.
And then Dave did their thing, and then he left, and then Sammy came in, and then after Dave came back, he's like, "Well, I'm not singing Sammy's songs." But the ironic thing is, he sang Sammy's songs before, and that's what I just find that amusing to me.
Well,
So
I look at it like it's a vicious circle.
yeah,
And when you're putting on the lead singer hat, I'm sorry, you're
yeah,
I don't know. I don't worry about the way I look or act on stage,
yeah,
but I'm not up front. I'm on the drums. I feel like giving somebody the finger, I can do it
yeah.
and get away. You know?
Well, I'm just a bass player, so nobody even knows I'm on the stage. So
Yeah.
just the
But
dude with the hat,
my point is, there's so much ego
Yeah,
happening
it is.
in that vein, and I don't think that Sammy Hagar wears that hat as strong as David Lee Roth did.
No, I think. Well, I mean, there's a lot that went on there, and I think it was more said than actually was because Sammy and Dave actually went on a tour together called the Sam and Dave tour.
Well, here we are. We're a victim of journalism again.
Exactly. So I don't think there was ever really a rift between Sam and Dave, and I understand that they don't want to do these other songs, and I get that. And Sammy did some of Dave's stuff because you got to do them, right? And then when Dave came back, he's probably like, I'm not going to do them, whatever. He couldn't really because Dave really can't sing Sammy's songs.
Right.
He just can't do it, right? So, and that was fine. But the funny thing about it all is when Sammy left, they got Gary Sharon, right? The guy from Extreme.
And Michael Anthony decided to work with Sammy on the side.
Right. Well, here's the thing, though. Gary Sharon, the album they did, the Van Halen 3, it was terrible. It was a terrible album, right? But live, Gary could sing Sammy and Dave, right? So if you got to see him live with Gary Sharon, you got everything, best of both worlds, right? So that's the only credit I can give Gary Sharon. The album he did, Van Halen 3, sucked, but the live show with Gary, they were doing all the old Dave, they were doing all the Sammy. It was a great live show,
But
you
you
know?
see, I think the one thing here that should be pointed out, though, I think Sammy, and I have no doubt about this, in the back of my mind, Sammy could walk out on stage and do every bit of David Lee stuff
Mhm. Yeah.
and cover it
Yep.
without breaking a sweat.
Yeah.
So, but yet, I think at David Lee Roth, especially in a live situation, struggles to even hit his own stuff that he did in the studio.
Yeah. And definitely in the past, say 8 years, he can't even do what he did before. Which, I get it,
Yeah,
you
he
know.
put himself too hard. But then you got people, you got Sammy Hagar's, and you got Glenn Hughes.
Yeah.
I mean, these are people that I don't care how old they don't get old, man.
No.
So you got to know that the man is living healthy, and it's for the love of the music.
Yeah. So anyway, that's our picks for bands that switch singers, and that's our review. I gave it an 8. Mike gave it a 9 for AC/DC's Power Up. So go check it out.
Check it
And
out. You
go-
won't be disappointed.
Yep, definitely won't be disappointed. Until next time, you guys stay safe out there.
Peace, and keep on listening to the music.
That's right.
Y'all later.